we haven't met yet, my name is Miles. I'm one of the program leads at Techquitable. And first and foremost, I want to say congratulations to the fellows for 9 weeks of intensive coursework with us. I know you've had your one-on-one or two-on-one meeting with mentors every week, and just hearing about how much y'all have learned, how much you've gotten to learn from whether each other or your mentors. It is no mean feat, especially while balancing coursework in the middle. So congratulations to you all. We have so enjoyed having you here. For this last session, we're gonna do things a little differently. Instead of the normal Techquitable lesson for a different technical topic, we're gonna have a panel of recruiters come. We've had some folks generous to give their time on Sunday to talk about what life is like as a recruiter, what they look for in people they're working with, and to give you some really sage advice on how to navigate the interview process from folks that are very much inside it. And then for the last 15 or so minutes, we'll do a one-on-one, more fireside chat style with a Techquitable alum, Shanice, who'll be coming with us to talk for a bit. So let's move on. Talked a little about this. I think we're gonna go kick off to our panel discussion. And as we get started, let's do a brief round of introductions. Kamara, do you want to start?
Oh, the mute button's going to be the death of me. Hi, everyone. My name is Kamar Swaby. I've been at Microsoft for, it's going to be 5 years in July, and I'm a university recruiter currently covering software engineers for the Mid-Atlantic. So if you think of on the East Coast, everything that is not covered by the New England Patriots, I probably have a hand in helping to recruit for. That's me.
Awesome. Michelle, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Roque. I'm a university recruiter at Duolingo. I've been at Duolingo about a year now. Sorry. I'm working from home, so my dog is here. But I've been at Duolingo for about a year and working specifically with software engineering new grads.
Right on. Ellis, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name is Ellis, and I'm the head of talent acquisition at TripleByte. For those not familiar, TripleByte's a talent acquisition platform for software engineers. I'm responsible for all hiring across the company, but additionally, being the head of talent acquisition for a talent acquisition platform means that I'm very plugged into product and fairly customer facing for helping people understand what hiring trends are going on in the market. And I can also see basically everything happening on our back end across about 3,000 company users that we have.
Awesome, thank you. And Cameron, you want to round us off?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I've been at Medium for about 3.5 years. I currently sit in an HR business partner role, but for about 2.5 years, I helped build out all of the recruiting operations at Medium. At first, it was me and the head of people, and part of that transition included the pandemic. So got to figure out how to move our entire candidate experience from a physical world to a virtual world, and what that looks like for candidates across the board. So I'm excited to be here with y'all.
Thank you so much all. Cameron, you touched on some really great points around how recruiting, I'm sure as a job and as a practice and interviewing in general has changed so much during the pandemic. And I think with that in mind, that might be a good place for us to start. And Cameron, I'd love for you to kick us off with this first question. And I'll ask every question of the four of y'all, but we're shifting up the order and who answers as we go along. But starting with Cameron, how have you found the pandemic has changed the recruiting process, especially for early career applicants, if you notice any particular trends?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everyone's still looking for amazing talent, so y'all are going to be fine. I think one helpful thing to keep in mind is that recruiters and recruiting ops folks know that interviewing online is hard. And so as a result, I feel like in general, you can trust the fact that there's going to be a lot of empathy on the other end. That said, get your ducks in a row, test out your connection ahead of time, all of the nuts and bolts on that level. I would say the trickiest thing to keep in mind is obviously when we're in person, it's much easier to build rapport and be like, I like your shoes, and what beautiful weather we're having. Well, none of that exists anymore in the same way. So I think when you're going into an interview in a virtual setting, there are still opportunities to build that little bit of connection with whoever you're chatting with. So I think just because it's in a virtual setting, find ways to also, just start every conversation with a little bit of a friendly question. If you're given time, of course, being able to ask about the person you're interviewing with to get some more of that human element, because that has been what's been reduced in the interview process. But the recruiter knows that you're human, you're human, and there's still an opportunity to bring your humanity to the interview as well.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. And I think that beyond interviewing and just in general in the world, how we were able to connect with each other, not as people behind a screen and these bright lights, but as humans trying to make a connection, is such a valuable skill. And even having that little moment to step back and say, like, I'm not just talking to a software program, I'm talking to a human being with thoughts and feelings and wants to get to know me, same way I want to get to know them, is, I think, a really grounding place to start for an interview or connection of any kind. Kamara, do you have any thoughts on this question as well?
Definitely. So for me, I remember the before times. Oftentimes, we did have some of the mechanisms in order to do virtual interviews before. So we had phone interviews, but a good portion of the season, we would either send people out to college campuses in order to do interviews there or at your conferences. And there were touch points in order to meet with recruiters or people on the recruiting team or from the company in order to get their interest. Of course, with the pandemic, we've switched and we're still doing virtual interviews. And I think we're going to continue it in this hybrid environment that we're moving towards. I think oftentimes having a good story, is even through virtual, is a great way in order to make sure you have impact during this session, because you only have 45 minutes or give or take in order to answer some questions. So knowing the story you put on your resume, because your resume is fair game. If you put it on, you should be able to explain it, but also making sure to give nuance. One of the mistakes sometimes people make is not talking too little in their interviews. I'd rather you say too much than too little, because if you give me too little, there's not enough to work with. Because at the end of the day, we are both human as interviewers and people on the other side. So we want the best for you, giving you hints in terms of tell me more, do this, just to make sure we can get as much out of you possible. So make it easy on the interviewer in that regard. Help us help you. I think overall, but if you have your story in line, and one of the best tips is when someone gives you a question, think about why they're asking that question in the first place. Yeah, as a shy person myself, talking about myself, I don't like it. But in terms of thinking about why would someone ask me a question, an example is, tell me a time you had a group project and something went wrong. I think about, they want to know how I work in a group. Maybe they want to talk about how I deal with conflict and how do I take leadership in resolving that conflict. And from those scenarios, I can think about how I would structure how I would answer those questions. And it makes it easier as a shy person like myself in order to answer them. So yeah, and also use your friends in order to practice interviews and those career services.
Yeah, all resources you have, whether your friends or the career services at your school, incredible to get you on the road to getting that internship or job. And thank you so much for all the detailed answer. I want to kick it to Michelle too. Any thoughts on how recruiting and the recruiting process changed for you in the last few years?
Yeah, so I do think that Cameron Kamara, sorry if I said that wrong, summed it up pretty perfectly in my opinion. I do think that one of the main things that our interviewers do talk about is like that personal aspect that you miss from being in person, and just like I think Cameron mentioned, like complimenting their shoes, right? Like something simple like that makes it very easy to then continue. One of the things that we do with our interviews is when you get your interview packet with who you're going to chat with, you actually get a LinkedIn, like their direct LinkedIn. So for us, that's been a really good way for like to start that connection, right? You can go on their LinkedIn, send them a message, or just kind of see what schools they went to, what they've been working on. Because then when you get into that interview, even if you don't want to start talking about yourself right away, it's really cool to just kind of bring something up that you saw on their LinkedIn. Like maybe you were in the same club at some point in time. So I think for sure that the personal piece is what's shifted very much during COVID. But I also did start only in recruiting during COVID. So this is the only world I've known. So that's just my piece there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The having jumped into the recruiting game mid the world changing under you is definitely no small feat in itself. And Ellis, do you want to give some thoughts as well on this question?
Sure. I mean, just a little bit more, because I think what's been said so far is excellent. A thing to keep in mind, as fair or unfair as this is to a certain degree, you are being assessed for the skill that is interviewing, and not just the skill of whatever job it is that you're going to be doing. And as recruiters, we try and mitigate that as much as possible, and we try and read between the lines of maybe somebody being introverted instead of extroverted, which particularly in tech land is, I think, very understandable. But it's a skill that you have to practice no matter what resources you're using to do it. And like any other skill, you just kind of have to do it sometimes before you're actually going to feel comfortable doing it. It took me being a recruiter probably until my second or third job before I felt like I had a really concise way that I could go through my background in a way that really told a story, and it was not just me kind of recounting disjointed facts. And that is the skill that is interviewing, and you kind of have to practice that and get good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And building off of that, I can say for myself as a software engineer, one thing I've had to get better at is telling the narrative of my career and have it not be, like you said, disjointed facts or this product and that project that don't tell a story themselves, but rather things that are building up towards a story and presentation of where I am now, where I want to go. So that I think anyone can do at any stage in their career, early or very senior. Like, make sure you can tell things about yourself, stories, facts, whatever, that paint a cohesive picture of you. Thank you so much for the answer. This is an awesome place to start. Moving on to another question, Ellis, I'd love for you to start out with this answer. Like, are there any common mistakes you're seeing amongst early career SWEs or undergraduates who are applying for their first job as they're navigating the interview process?
So it's hard to do this for every company, which to a certain degree, applying to particularly your first job is going to be kind of a numbers game, right? Like, you are going to have most places not get back to you. You're going to have even the places that get back to you most of the time are going to say, I'm not interested in talking to you. Now, if you have the bandwidth for it, and I realize it's a grind, and any recruiter that's on here that's done a lot of sourcing can absolutely understand this, but having some kind of follow-up and customization to that message, like if you're applying to a job, if you can find that hiring manager on LinkedIn or find somebody that you think might be on that team, following up with them, and probably at least 2 follow-ups. One saying, hey, I just applied to this. Even if you're not interested in me, I'd love to hear your experiences there. And then one more, try not to make it, hey, just wanted to get to the top of your inbox. I think any recruiter here can tell you that gets the worst response rate out of anything. But something that maybe produces a little bit more value of like, hey, I noticed you did X and I worked on X kind of undergrad project. And so this is really interesting to me. That'll give you at least some kind of personal connection there. I realize that kind of thing is hard to do. You can write scripts to automate it that can work fairly well. I've done this before, but like having some kind of personal follow up like that is going to make you stand out versus just your cover letter that they're probably not going to read and a resume that, as an undergrad, it's hard to make yourself stand out. Like, unless you've done a huge amount of internships at really interesting places that you might not have even known were interesting when you were walking into them. It's going to be hard to stand out in that way. And so you've got to try to find some other way to do that.
Totally. I think a lot of us can relate here to be undergraduates, not knowing how their college skills translate into real world skills, but being able to pick the things you've worked on to try to, again, paint that narrative, cohesive story, and make yourself stand out, even without as much work experience, is really big. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on what sort of common mistakes you're seeing amongst early career SWEs coming toward you or that you source?
Yeah, so I would say I was also at Google before this, and even though I wasn't a recruiter, I did work on looking at applications directly every day. And so while I did that, one of the biggest things that I did notice was when you look at, you know, a job description and then you kind of look at your resume, is people weren't highlighting things on that job description that maybe you were doing within the position, right? So you would maybe pass on somebody that had that right experience and right qualifications, but because they didn't highlight it in their resume correctly, then it gets lost. So I would definitely say before you send every single application, which I know we just said, I think Ella said, it's a numbers game, and it totally is, especially that first one, but really make sure you go through it and see if there are keywords that you can highlight, because that'll definitely make it stand out. Another big thing that I've noticed is if you don't have experience, that's okay, because not everyone can get an internship during the summers. But a lot of people don't know that we can also look at projects you've done at school. So if you have a class, or even like, let's say you do a hackathon that's outside of school, you join, you know, there's a lot of organizations that do hackathons on the side. You can join one of them and then talk about your project within your resume. So I know people personally that didn't add those into their resumes. And once I reviewed it, I said, go back and add it in, because that definitely makes it stand out. So those, I think, are the big ones that I can think of right now.
Yeah, those are some fantastic points. I think bringing up the hackathon projects, tying that into something I think Cameron dropped as a link in here about the STAR method, which if you click on the link stands for situation, task, action, result. It's a way of framing problems you work on and how they can help paint a story of, I contributed to this problem, I had this issue, I made it work in this way. And at any level you're at, whether you're at the hackathon, your college years, or you're 10 years into your career working on things billions of people use, there's always a way to frame it as, here's the situation, here's what I worked on, here's how I solved it, and here's how I worked with others to get to that result. I think that emphasis on hackathons really helps when you're an undergraduate, when you may have worked on a project for even a weekend, but you might have learned a lot about yourself and still have a lot to talk about within that experience. So definitely recommend, following the stuff Michelle's saying, go, and with many products you have, like if you have hackathons and stuff on your resume, you can definitely still talk about that. Also, Kamara, do you want to also get some thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, my favorite topic. So one, this is tiny. Again, this is a numbers game, but making sure that depending on the application you submit, making sure if you're titling it, making sure it's correct for the company you're doing. I've seen some people who wanted to apply to Meta give me a resume says their objective, I want to be a software engineer at Meta. I'm a big girl. My feelings are not hurt as easily. But someone else might feel a different type of way. So that's proofread, first of all. Second of all, and this is something on the resume and in the interviews I see, group working with groups is a great thing to have and a great thing to experience. But oftentimes in the resume and the interview, people often emphasize what the group does, but not what you did in particular. And I kind of alluded this before. So if I'm asking you a question about what was something you did as a group, how do you overcome it? If you're talking about how person XYZ solved it, it's great for XYZ, but I'm not interviewing XYZ, I'm interviewing you. So I want to know what you did. So on your resume, if you talk about a work experience, emphasize what was your specific impact, not just the team's. And kind of side to that, oftentimes, a thing to boost your resume is like adding those quantitative and qualitative details. For example, I helped, well, that's my fourth point, but let me be fast. So like maybe I did this using this tool, whether it is this coding language, I did 100 lines of code or 1,000 lines of code just to increase that impact. And finally, my biggest, it's not a pet peeve, I'm nice. I helped, I assisted. Get rid of the help or assisted. Just tell me what you did, because I assume you did it, but it's more impactful and saves more space if you just tell me what exactly you did to help and how. So I think those are the things that can help to make a stronger resume. So yeah.
If I could plus 100, plus 1,000 of that, I would happily do so. I really love that advice. I have seen it a lot in even folks when I'm reviewing when we do like peer feedback at work, like the things like I helped or I assisted like don't give you that clarity on like what you are doing. It is so much nicer when you can say like I did XYZ, I contributed to this part of the code base, I made this X times faster. When you emphasize what you did, it's easier to talk about yourself. It gives the interviewer an easier like jumping point to talking about exactly what you are good at, or at least I found this in my experience, and can make a world of difference when you're specific about like what you exactly did. Cameron, do you want to finish us off with your thoughts on mistakes you might see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really easy to think, I know how to talk about my experiences. And then you get in an interview and you're speaking, and you have to count on the fact that there's going to be nerves that you're not necessarily feeling when you're just chilling at home, being like, yeah, I got this. So the way that I've counseled other people to get ready for that moment, sort of like that feeling of that rush of performance anxiety we might get while we're interviewing, specifically if it's a behavioral interview, is to just write a script ahead of time. It does not mean that you're going to be reading the script, but just that act of getting it down and getting clear on your thoughts with bullet points, so that when you're in that situation, you've done the work to get mentally organized. So when the performance anxiety comes up, you just might be like, you know what, good thing I have this in my back pocket. Ways that mistakes I've seen are just, they've all been mentioned by all of our panelists already, but just getting really clear on STAR method is helpful, but if something else works better for you, great. Certainly emphasizing that individual impact, very important point. And then also metrics are helpful. If there's ways in your responses where you can talk about, I increased X to Y through doing X, Y, Z, that's very helpful. And then beyond that, being like, and this is how I did it, and this is the like story, this is what I learned. So any way to, in those moments, prepare ahead of time, get your bullet points on point, and then also think about ways you can work in some metrics to talk about, I would highly recommend.
There's no substitution for preparation, and nothing really hits home like the exact pinpoint of I made this 5% faster, 10% faster, 100% faster. It's fantastic advice. Thank you so much, all of you, for those answers. And also quick note for the fellows, we do have a Q&A portion, or time dedicated for a Q&A portion. So if you're thinking of any questions right now, there will be some time for you to just shout them out once we get there, or drop them in the chat if you don't feel comfortable saying them out loud, and I'm happy to ask them on your behalf. Just direct message me on Zoom. So moving on to our next question. What are some tips you all have for students that don't land the job? We've touched on this a little bit, but I think this is the common question for interviewees that may not get their job on the first go. But what are some tips you have for students that don't land the job? What are the best ways to keep in touch with the interviewer or with their recruiters and set themselves well for interviewing a company again, maybe the next semester or next year? And Michelle, I'd love for you to start.
Yeah, so I did actually do another kind of panel thing before where I did talk to women engineers about not getting that first job. And one of the things that I learned from them actually is kind of getting a support group. So I knew many of them actually ended up creating group chats with friends and then just sending rejections every time they got it, which was very interesting. And when I asked, like, why were you doing this? Or like, why does this help you? It was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I have to remember that I am one person and the people around me are also having similar shared experiences about getting rejected, especially right out of college. It is a hard time. And so it's kind of a way to remind yourself that it's not the end of the world to get a rejection, right? So I think remembering that you are capable and you are very smart and you can totally do it. But remembering that other people are also going through this. So it's not like an internal just you situation was one of the things that I learned from them. But just in general, I do think, I love to say, like, feel the emotion, right? So if you're upset, feel that emotion, but remember that you can keep going, right? Sorry, my words are not working today, but continuing to go forward. It is a numbers game, we mentioned. Continue to apply. I love the reach out afterwards. I always let my candidates know that we can talk over LinkedIn if they want anything else. So I always say, feel free to reach out to that recruiter again. Sometimes they'll be able to give you more detailed information on like why in the process you got rejected, right? Maybe not give you a ton of details, but it'll give you good indicators on like, maybe I need to work a little bit more on my coding. Maybe it was the, oh my goodness, behavioral questions that maybe I didn't touch on certain points. And I think Cameron dropped the STAR method in there. That's a very big one. And if you're not familiar with it, definitely look into it. But definitely keeping in touch with the recruiter afterwards. I always do touch points again with candidates that I've worked with that that have reached out to me. Personally, I kind of have like a sheet where I reach out to them every couple of months just to see like what they're doing and how they're doing. And so as long as you kind of start that conversation, the recruiters are usually more than likely to want to help you continue your path, whether it's with them now or them later.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Kamara, what are your thoughts on this?
I definitely +1 on everything Michelle said. I think for me, like I remember getting rejected, got rejected on a Saturday, cried on the Sunday. And I just went back to the grind to find something else for the summer. I think for me is finding out those communities that, again, relying on, but also one of the things is for us is like, what are the resources out there based on the person who probably interviewed me? And other things of that nature in order to make sure that I can do better next time or even find a different path. So I know for us at Microsoft, we have Microsoft University Recruiting Team on LinkedIn. Join us. It's a LinkedIn group, basically where you can join and learn from us. One of the things as a recruiter I look for is someone who tries again, because I know the story and I fight in order to get someone included. One of my best stories are the people who maybe they didn't get it the first time. Then the second time, even if they were interviewing for America team in a different country, I fought because I know how much they worked hard for this and how passionate they are about not just the company, but the work. So just because you didn't get it that first time, the second time, you'll have more advocates in your corner. So finding those resources and making those connections in the company or whatever company or set of skills or job you want could be a great way in order to learn and improve. So that's it from me.
Absolutely. The persistence is major key in all of this. Ellis, do you want to go next about tips you might have for students?
Yeah. So it's really easy to echo kind of what some of the other panels have said. It's really easy to get turned down over and over again, especially if you made it late stage in a process and have it just suck. And it affects your self-esteem and in ways entirely unrelated to work. And that is the nature of the beast, and it's gonna suck. And you kind of just have to power through that. Experience those emotions, process them. They're very valid and legitimate emotions, but the end of the day, particularly for somebody earlier in their career, you're just not going to have a very high offer on-site to offer ratio or application to hearing back from a recruiter. I would definitely set reminders, particularly for companies that you're really interested in or a role that you're really interested in, and particularly for a startup. If it's been 4-6 months, something like that, a startup probably doesn't have a great system in place for following back up with quality talent. That 6 months in a startup is infinity time. And so if they don't really have a mechanism for knowing, okay, this job description has changed, or okay, we think we have the bandwidth to take on a junior onto the team right now, the ball's got to be in your court at that point, as fair or unfair as that might be. If it's somewhere that you're really interested in, literally set yourself a calendar reminder to reach out to this person and follow up with them. If they're not with the same company, figure out who's serving in that role now, whether it's, they went through a round of layoffs since the VP of people or something like that. You're gonna, as I feel with really quality talent that gets away from me, you never really want to let them go. You want to stay, have some amount of contact with them. Don't be aggressive, don't be rude, don't kind of come out of the blue with entitlement, but stay on top of them. Even if the answer 4 to 6 months from now is hey, we still don't have a good spot from you, 4 to 6 months after that, you should be dropping them a line. Also, be aware of the online brand that you should be creating for yourself. That's going to help somebody be more of an advocate for you after that. Be regularly committing to GitHub, to open source projects, have meetups that you're attending and that you have your profile like set to public. Make sure to use the same username, probably associated with your real name across all of those places. Like you're need to be thinking about during this time that you're, have been rejected from this company that you'd want to be plugged into, what you can do to build your personal brand in this way. That's going to give them greater visibility into who you are as an engineer and who you are as a person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And Cameron, do you want to give our last response for tips students can
Oh,
tips you can give to students?
Yeah, add anything that hasn't been said already. I will say, just in terms of like mental mindset, all of this advice is perfect, wouldn't change a thing. I don't know how many of you listening on the panel are athletes, but that is one way to approach applying to jobs. You can't train 100% all the time. You have to take breaks. How can you break that up? So for me, when I've been in job search situations personally, or when I've been working with particularly folks on more entry-level roles, like you have to kind of set yourself a schedule, stick to it. So apply in waves, being like, I'm applying to 20 jobs today. Great. Do something to reward yourself. Take a break. You might get some calls. Great. Celebrate that. Write down after those calls, whether they advance you to the next round or not. What did I learn? Did I say what I wanted to say in my answer to that question? Yes, no. Okay, make a mental note. What can you do better? And it sort of begins to build over time. You're going to build that confidence. You're building your stamina, and you will get a job. It will happen. And I think part of it is treating it like an endurance sport a little bit, particularly at first, and being very, very kind to yourself when you do need to take a break, because it's really mentally exhausting to interview, to apply. You're putting yourself out there, you're being vulnerable. So be very kind to yourself. And the rejections will come. And it's not personal. It's just feedback. It is not a rejection. It is just feedback. So just continuing with that mindset will help you feel a little more grounded in the long run.
Absolutely. Being kind to yourself, taking breaks. You are not, to tie it back to our earliest point, you're not a machine. You're a human being on this journey. And every rejection or every no can be turned into feedback that you can take into your next interview. But thank you all for those wonderful answers. We have about 10 minutes left. So I want to open the floor to fellows. So fellows, if you have any questions for our panelists that you want to either ask in the chat, and I can read out loud, or ask privately to me, or to say them out loud yourselves, fire away. If not, I definitely have more questions prepared.
Miles, it looks like we have one raised hand from Mia.
Yeah. Would you like to ask a question yourself or drop in the chat?
Yeah. So yeah, just a quick question right now. I have my summer decisions almost fully complete, but do you have any recommendations of how I should weigh offers? So for example, I have a lot of research. Is there a particular, if I want to be a software engineer, maybe next summer, is there a particular opportunity that I should be thinking about pursuing this summer? And then, so like, what's the best preparation for a job in the future, like at Medium, Microsoft, Duolingo? And then the additional questions, like, how do you weigh offers between companies or between organizations? And do you have any advice for that?
I can talk about how I think about DJing your career, if that's helpful.
Go for it.
Sure. So if you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but grabbing like an internship for this coming summer and thinking about how that's going to line you up for what you want your next job to be, you want to think about what you want your career progression to be and what you want that to look like. As you're accepting a job now or an internship now, you should be thinking about what the next job after that is going to be. If you have any long-term goals for your career, how this is going to move the needle towards getting there, and towards think about, okay, here's the goals that I have for my career. So therefore, these should be my decision criteria for accepting my next role, whatever those decision criteria might be. Beyond that, it's very common to, especially if you have more than one offer, it's very common to want to try to play those offers off against each other. I would recommend against that. The way that I would recommend thinking about it is, here is the persona of the ideal job that you want. And the vast majority of the time, you're not going to find that specific job, but you want to try to assess how close a job comes to this persona. And there's a bunch of different criteria that are going to go into that. Compensation is obviously going to be one of them, but like, are you working with a team that you like? Are you working with technologies that you like? Are you in a problem space that you're interested in? All those things are going to draw, and many more, are going to drive that decision. And you want to think about what's going to be the best match in that way, instead of trying to play companies off against each other to try to get the maximum comp or whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. No, keep going.
Oh yeah, I also want to answer this question, and it might be slightly different. So first off, definitely think of your internship in mind as like, is this what I want to do in the future? Because there might be some aspects of that summer job is like, oh, I love it. And other things is like, this actually sucks. And it's fine if you want to switch over to a different kind of role or a different kind of position from that. And then that might influence how you want to pursue your future career, whether if it's at a different company or just a different role. Take the time to network within and without outside in order to do so. I'm of the mind, I'm personally fine with a little bit of negotiation, because what you don't want to happen is that you find out like you're being underleveled because of something you didn't ask for. But I think the first thing you need to make sure of is, what are my priorities? What are the things that I need? And making sure you're honest with the recruiter or negotiator, whoever it is, because if you end up at a company and you're not satisfied and you find out that you could have asked for it, that like, it's a bad experience that could have been avoided. So I think for me overall is like being honest to yourself is like, do I need XY compensation, or being able to work remotely more important? Is being able to have choice into a field that I'm passionate about? I think with that, you'll feel more comfortable saying what you don't want and what you want. So at the end of the day, when you make that final decision, you feel comfortable with what you've made so far. So that's my take on the matter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that detail. We're going to move on to another question, just so we get as many questions answered from our fellows as possible. We have a question from Anyeli. I know most internships are during the summer, but are there any intern opportunities during the fall? I'm graduating a semester early this fall, and I'm wondering if I could instead look into internships during the semester and graduate normally in May. Maybe Cameron, Michelle, do you all want to hop on this question or give your thoughts on this?
Yes, so I know specifically speaking about Duolingo, we don't do internships outside of summer. So I think unfortunately on my end, I don't have anything to help, but I know that other companies do like year-long internships. So I don't know if anybody else has anything there.
Yeah, to weigh on that, historically, Medium has had a strong partnership with Code 2040, which is got to work on with Miles on that at Medium, which was wonderful. And that was a summer internship as well. I think one thing to think about too is like, if you're thinking about whether to get involved in a program that supports interns finding jobs or companies, like go to where people are going to champion you, I think, and that could look different for everyone. I know that for myself, when I've been thinking about making career decisions, whether that's, how do I grow myself at this stage in my career now that I've been in people operations for about 5 years, I think about like, who might have had a similar experience in me that can help coach me along, whether that's in that next interview, getting into a program that's going to help with a summer program, where are those champions going to be? And for me, that has been extremely helpful. Like reaching out to other like queer leaders in people operations has given me a really helpful perspective on how to guide my particular career. So for yourself, finding those groups of communities where you're like, oh, this group of people might have a similar experience to me, they can continue to nudge me in the right direction. Medium has unfortunately paused internships just for this year. So otherwise I'd refer all of you, but we don't have that operating for this year at the moment.
For sure. Thank you so much for that answer. And as we, get down on time, I'm expecting Shanice to hop on soon. I think there's a great question we have a Slack thread the Slack space for all of the fellows. And one question here that I think is great is for all of you, why did you decide to become a recruiter? Maybe let's start with Kamara.
The mute button will be the death of me. I think for myself, so I was fortunately impacted by a recruiter. And the work I was doing in undergrad aligned in some ways in what I was passionate about, like bringing opportunities. My background is a first gen college student, fly, I like to call it. For me, so like being able to bring back opportunities to others, especially those who never thought of they find themselves in a company like Microsoft or similar, or having opportunity, I think that was passionate to me. So I remember when I got the call to interview, I'm from New York, so I was in a subway station. And for some reason, the service worked back then, because back then Wi-Fi was not a thing. And then I got a call like, hey, you want a job? And I was like, yeah, I do. I'm broke. I need a job. So I did my interview the week after. So those stories is the reason why I stayed in recruiting, because being able to tell that story about how you can give back is really, really great. And then helping people understand and flesh themselves on who they want to be and how they want to be, I think that really helps make it worthwhile.
Thank you so much for the answer. Michelle, do you want to give your thoughts on why you became a recruiter or switched into recruiting?
Yeah, so honestly, I did not ever see myself being a recruiter. I thought I was going to go into psychology, but after I got my first job, and it actually ended up being kind of like an assistant to recruiters, and that was the first time that I knew anything that had to do with recruiting. I was working in a software engineer space as well, and from there, the teams that I worked on all worked with like a lot of represented populations within tech, and me being also like first generation Latina, and then also being first generation college student, I realized that this was kind of my way to help my community get into this space, because I got lucky to some degree. And so when I moved to Duolingo, I had the intent to kind of work in recruiting, especially college students, because I think it's a hard area to get into. And so to some degree, I was like, if I can help other students that are kind of going through the similar path that I went to get into these tech jobs, that's kind of what I want to do, and be kind of a support system for them. So that ended up being why I'm in recruiting, and I'm really, really excited about being in this space. There's so much I still have yet to learn that I've been learning from all of the other wonderful panelists here. But that's ultimately how I got into it, and why I enjoy it now.
Absolutely. I feel we've been hearing a lot of stories recently about being champions for others and finding champions for folks like you in the space. And it's really great to hear your story around that as well. Ellis, do you want to share about what got you into recruiting and why I became a recruiter?
Sure. It is the story that I've heard from a lot of recruiters of how you got into recruiting, which is by accident. I once upon a time used to race sailboats professionally, and at the end of a practice session, the guy that was skippering said, "Hey, you're quick. Would you like a job?" And that's how I became a recruiting researcher, which is like just producing lead lists and like ecosystems of relevant companies and things like that at JCPenney corporate of all places, where they gave me my own office on the 36th floor of Spear Tower Street in one market, which sent very unrealistic expectations for the rest of my career. But I mean, I didn't seek it out deliberately. I actually dropped out of college for the career, dropped out of the very useful philosophy degree that I was getting. And once I got plugged into it, it was clear that this is the operating system for how companies build themselves. And it became the way for me, at least, in which I see like the flow of talent driving the way that business works generally and understanding that on a deeper level. And I think that's what spoke to me and what made me realize, wow, this is something I am actually really passionate about.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Cameron, do you want to give your thoughts on what got you into recruiting?
Yes, a good job can change your life. And that has certainly been the case for me. And so, like so many folks have said on the panel already, having people who go to bat for you and champion you makes you want to do it for other people. So there's that spirit of wanting to pay it forward. Now I work more internally, supporting our employees through their growth at the company, but my time in talent acquisition was really fueled by that desire to replicate that feeling for other people of like, wow, this job is life-changing. This salary bump is life-changing. These learning opportunities are life-changing. And to be able to feel that and remember how it felt when people went to bat for me really made me excited to support candidates on their journey, knowing what a big deal that can be.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you all, both those great answers, your time here today, and the great feedback and advice you've given for our fellows. So much of this is invaluable. So much of this is stuff that I wish I had known when I was an undergrad and getting ready to go search for a job, but really can't thank you enough for your time here today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we hope to see you all back again soon for future cohorts. And I think we're just about 45 minutes in with this panel. So we're going to be moving on to our AMA Ask Me Anything session with a Techquitable alum. I'm going to try to share the slideshow again, run from beginning. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Can everyone still see my screen? Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, perfect. And Shanice, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
What's up, Shanice? It has been a minute. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a long time since we connected, so happy to be back here.
So yeah, so great to see you again. So glad you are back. Folks, for context, Shanice and I worked together in Techquitable about, I want to say, a year and a half ago or so, like something like that, like maybe 2021. And Shanice, at the time you were a technical fellow, still an undergrad, and now you are an engineer at Twitter. Are you still at Twitter right now? Or?
Yes, I'm still at Twitter full time.
Awesome. And yeah, honestly, I just wanted this chat to be a chance for us to talk about how your career, how you found your career, how you found Techquitable helpful in your career, and a chance for maybe some of the fellows to ask you questions about where you've been and where you feel you're going. Doesn't that sound great?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I guess to start out, like how long have you been at Twitter? And when you're in undergrad, what did you focus on? Were you CS major, or what was your area of focus?
Yeah. It's a funny story because I was a tech major at college. I was a game design major, which is completely, it's relevant to computer science, but a little bit different, with more art focus. I was initially a computer science major, but I was not good with math, so I had to change gears to find something else that I could do that might lead me to a software engineering career. And game design was the closest thing I could find in my college. And I really was excited to be, hopefully be a software engineer full time. And I kind of found my way to finding some internships locally for a couple of years, the past 2 years. And I think I wanted to break into big tech. So I think I needed to find ways to practice for interviews for this route. So that's where I found this program. So I guess I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. And what do you focus on at Twitter right now?
Yeah, I focus on backend engineering. I was actually a QE inside the QE department. So handling QA or testing operations by building internal tools. I was first an intern last fall, and I came back full time this past spring, or still winter. So I've been here for 2 months, but more like 5 months combined together.
Awesome. And has that entirely been remote, or have you been going into the Twitter New York office during this time?
I'm full-time remote, so that's within my contract, but I do have permissions to go to the office in New York City if I wanted to, but I enjoy being at home all day, really.
I feel that not having to deal with a crowded subway or people honking at you is definitely a blessing. How how have you found onboarding remotely and joining remotely as a new grad into Twitter? Like, what have some of the things you've enjoyed been? What have the challenges been?
Onboarding is not the best thing, but it's not the worst thing. I think it's been a unique journey within, I guess, with Twitter, because they have like a 90-day onboarding period where you're mostly doing internal training, doing HR stuff, meeting your team, meeting your department. So lots of introductions, lots of paperwork. So it's not much quick pace, but it's really much a slow introduction to the company culture, our goals and missions, and knowing the tools. So it's a slow journey, but it's definitely something that I like about that.
Right on. That's awesome. And I guess shifting gears a bit, thinking about Techquitable, how did you first discover the program when you signed up to be a fellow?
That's something I still trying to remember. I think I might have found out in like a newsletter or a Slack channel. It's like I'm in lots of different newsletters for like tech, and I think someone mentioned about this program that I was not seeing anywhere else. So it's like, okay, this seems interesting. Let me try it out, because I am practicing on my own for interviews, but I think having a network or community of people who are also trying to practice would be much helpful to help me with this journey.
100%. Everyone needs a community to be able to get them to the goals they want to achieve. And how did you find Techquitable prepared you for your internship interviews, your full-time interviews, and to getting you on the road to being a professional SWE?
I think the program was the direct impact of me actually getting to Twitter. I had a number of interviews or different companies I was aiming for this fall internships at this time. I was part of the program this past summer. So I was really just trying to make sure I'm able to pass these technical interviews, because I think that was my biggest hurdle to getting to my goal of being a software engineer. I got interviews, but never able to get to the final part of the offer. So I think I was able to get interviews with Twitter, and I found the topics that Twitter was actually going to interview on, and we covered them in our sessions. And I think that was like directly impacted my success to at least a couple of offers I got for a new grad, and also my full internship with Twitter.
That's awesome. And I guess follow up, but you sort of already answered this. What did you feel the biggest thing was you got out of Techquitable as you were getting ready for the job hunt?
Along with the community, I think I enjoyed this fact that there's other students also going through this annoying process of technical interviews or whiteboarding interviews, is that I had a mentor or mentors along with me. I think knowing from experienced professionals of what they're actually doing on the job, and also what they did to interview for these jobs, was really just the insight I needed. Because I think from my own knowledge of like my own peers, they don't interview for big tech or know about tech interviews. So it's that insider knowledge I needed to know, how do I finesse or succeed in this journey to get that offer for big tech companies.
For sure. And having someone that's been there before, been in your shoes, and can talk you through here the kind of things you want to demonstrate on an interview is really big for getting over that last hurdle, like you were saying. And you mentioned having, was it multiple offers? Is that right? When you decided to join Twitter?
Yes.
How did you go about deciding, once you got to that point of having multiple offers, what would be the best be the best fit for you as you're starting out your career?
I mostly value about the team that I'll be on, the company culture, and also compensation. I think it's big to know that money is a big factor for me to make sure I'm able to support myself, my family. So that was a big factor. Also culture, because I think I want to be able to be proud about the company I work for, and our values and beliefs are aligned towards of making sure there is a diverse and inclusive culture internally, and also the product that we're making for our customers. And just making sure the team I'm on is supportive and wants me to grow as an entry-level engineer. So I think Twitter hit all three of those things that I think really made sure I knew and was confident to choose them for my full-time job post-college.
Absolutely. And I really vibe with that answer. Money is always important. Bills have to be paid. And along with that, thinking about places that will help you grow as a person and not grind you out or anything, but help you grow as an engineer and make you feel like you belong in a place and that you can grow and get better at what you're doing and connect with your colleagues, especially in a time like in this pandemic world where it's trickier and hard to connect in different ways, but having a team that really sets it up for you and makes you feel welcome is such a huge asset towards getting started in your career. Yeah, thank you so much for all of those detailed answers. I think we have some questions in our Techquitable Slack. Wentao, would you mind pulling those up for me? I have been not great at the
Yeah,
checking
sure
Slack
thing.
questions while having this presentation up.
Yep. I think in particular, we got a lot of questions from Louise. So, but I think this question kind of generally represents the broader questions that other people could be asking. So I'm going to drop them off in the chat here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. I guess the format didn't stay.
Oh, I think this is a good one. This is from Luis. How many technical interviews did you do before you received your first offer?
I try to see in terms of like new grad or for internships.
Let's say internships.
For internships. I actually counted all the companies I interviewed with and interviews I did. And I went through 27 for interview processes for last summer's internship. So 27 companies, at least they have like at least 3 interviews for each company. So I think 27 times 3 or 4 would give you your answer for how many interviews I got before I got an offer for internship.
So just so I understand, 27 different companies, and these are all on-site you're doing, so each one has 3 different interviews within the day that you're doing them?
Yeah, so at least 27 companies I did, at least I got past the resume review and hiring manager. So I got probably over 80 interviews I did before I got through the offer stages.
Okay, so 27 different companies, and each one has these set number of interview panels or interviews in an interview panel. That's definitely a journey, definitely a challenge. I admire, you and I work together. I know how talented of an engineer you are, and admire your fortitude in making it past that grind to get to where you are today. Just checking out some of these other questions. What is it like working at Twitter? What does your day-to-day look like?
Things are a little different now because I'm going towards the 90-day mark. So now that I'm close to like finishing onboarding, I'm actually getting some work put into my day-to-day. So right now I usually get up around like 10 or 11. I work on a team that's across the world. So people in UK, West Coast, East Coast, Central Time. So I think I try to work more in the afternoon. So I usually check email, check Slack, see any messages, see what's on my Jira board, which is just a way to track the tickets or work that have to be done for this sprint or these next 2 weeks. And I make sure I try to figure out ways to kind of unblock myself if I have any blockers. So try to ping any people who are senior engineers to see like, can they help me or pair program with me for a little bit? I mostly spend time coding or debugging or reading documentation to see how can I continue finishing my task for the day. So lots of reading, lots of trying to ask questions and just try to communicate asynchronously through our online tools that we have.
Yeah, you mentioned a skill that is hard to test for in the interview, in the CoderPad interview style, but the ability to unblock yourself is huge. Like I'm sure you've had even onboarding issues where your code doesn't compile or the build doesn't work or something like that, and you have to reach out to an assigned buddy or a senior engineer being like, hey, what is wrong? Can you help me with this? Like I'm guessing it's happened once or twice or a few times.
Yes, it happens so often that I didn't realize is that documentation is something that is undervalued in a lot of companies. Is like even within just inside a company that's as established as Twitter, is that documentation of every step of every process can differ from each team, department, and just that document. I just tried to unblock myself by Googling, asking engineers, and just trying things and seeing if I could fail, seeing what works and not. And I think it's been helpful because I've been making notes about it. So I'm actually working on the onboarding guide for my team right now because I don't want anyone else to go through the journey of feeling blocked in their onboarding stages. So making sure people know what steps they should do to fix any errors or any bugs that they find as they're onboarding.
Absolutely. Great on you for doing that. It is so important to the way teams function that there is not just up-to-date documentation, but in particular, up-to-date onboarding documentation, because codes and organizations are constantly changing things. Things that were working correctly for October 2021 might be entirely obsolete by May of 2022. And out-of-date documentation might as well be no documentation in a lot of cases. You have to give people up-to-date steps to make sure they can do their job and succeed. We have a question in the chat right now. You mentioned you would get the interviews, but what you had trouble with was passing to the offer stage, and I can relate. What exactly did you change in terms of practicing or resources you use that helped you advance? And that's from Agnelli. Any thoughts, Janice?
Yeah, I think mostly being part of the program, I think was what helped me, because I think I would practice on my own with LeetCode and just try to find like blind top 75, top 50 questions that companies ask. And going through it is that I can answer the question, but I'm not vocalizing what the steps and the processes that I'm going through. And I think that was the biggest hurdle, is that the interviewers don't know what's in my head and what I'm thinking, my approaches, and just the steps I'm taking. They just see a mouse and just a cruiser on the screen moving as I type. So it's that I needed to work on my communication skills as I'm working through a problem and asking for help during the interview. So that was what helped me kind of like shorten or lessen the number of interviews I got from like new grad and fall internship. So it's like I didn't have to do 80 plus interviews anymore, but I definitely need to work on my communication and work on talking about my processes as I work through a problem.
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough that last point you said, talking about your thought process through a problem. I can say for myself, I've had interviews where I did not solve the problem at hand, like I still had bugs at the end, but because I was able to show a thought process of how I got there, the interviewer said, this is great, you can move on to the next round. And conversely, places where I have gotten to an answer, but stumbled my way through, and because I did not show a clear thought process, there wasn't good signal for an interviewer to say, this person, I'm comfortable moving on to the next round. So if you're indexing on anything, then this is a skill that everyone needs to work on, especially when they're starting out, talking out your thought process, and whether you're doing that with other fellows, even talking to like an inanimate object as a practice interviewer is such a powerful thing to do when you are interviewing, getting ready to talk to an actual human. It's much easier than when you talk to assuming you have a nice interviewer, because a good interviewer will talk it out with you and not just stay entirely silent. Like interviewing is a conversation as well as a technical exercise. So I think we got time for about one more question. Let's see, I'm making sure I didn't ask any repeats. Oh, this is, I think, really good ones. Also from Luis, I believe. What advice do you have for any new graduate students who don't have any experience and or didn't get a tech-related internship during college?
That's a really good question. And I think I would think lots of students are in that position than you think. And I think for that, I would say work on building your network. I think knowing people who are also in the same position as you would be helpful, because you guys have a unique way to build out those skills. Has been working together with projects, attending hackathons, or attending virtual conferences, just trying to learn new skills that might be helpful to put on your resume. You might not think it's important to have projects, but projects is a good way to stand out. And also, I would leverage social media. I think another good way I got interviews was by just asking people on the internet, like making tweets to people in like tech Twitter, or just sharing things you're doing on LinkedIn. It's a good way to get noticed. So build up your resume with projects, work with your network and your peers, and just making sure your work is out there into the world so people can see and ask you questions. So make sure you're doing what you can to network your way to their role of your dreams, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot emphasize enough the power of networking. And we've heard from recruiters and you today, just the ability to use LinkedIn, use GitHub, use the open Slack communities that are available to, get your online presence out there. And even through Twitter, I know plenty of folks that have used Twitter to leverage a job by finding the right communities to be in tech, Twitter, and everything. But that's so important. And Shanice, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate your coming back and giving some of your thoughts about your journey and how fellows can jump off from Techquitable to succeed in the future.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be back and help future alums to get their role of their dreams, and happy to be here.
For sure. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Shanice.
Cool. So we've had some wonderful panelists come on today. This concludes, that's the last of the panels that we have. And sorry, one sec. So now we have a little bit about post-Techquitable. Wentao, do you want to take this away?
Sure, yeah. If you could grab the slide, that'd be great, because they're only like 3 pages. So all right, so let's talk about where to go from here now that Techquitable is wrapping up. Next slide, please. Well, first of all, before I kind of like dig into the messages here, I want to congratulate all of you guys for making through to the end of Techquitable. Like we know like how much of commitment like that you guys had to make in order to kind of balance Techquitable along with the score and other things that are going on in life. So really appreciate the dedication and commitment that you guys made to the program. But as we are kind of like reaching the end of program, there are kind of 3 key messages that we want to kind of give to you guys. And the first message is to reflect on your learnings. So we recognize the past 9 weeks of this program has been kind of whirlwind. You must have kind of observed a lot of new information, and sometimes even kind of feels like, okay, drinking like information or like learning from the fire hose. But just take the time to just like kind of absorb the learning and reflect on it. And so ask yourself about, like what you think were the biggest takeaway from participating in this program? And how did you think your career goals have changed now that you have worked with mentors and have a better understanding of what software engineering careers look like? And also ask yourself, what did you learn to be your strengths and weaknesses? Because that's going to also direct you to spend time in the right places to prepare. And then lastly, what do you need to do to achieve your goals, right? So these are the things that we'll recommend asking yourself as you reflect back on participating in this program, because at the end of the day, reflection is the key to your growth. So that's the first message that we wanted to kind of give to you guys. And then moving on to the next slide. So the second message, to continue learning. It's like, it's very different. The time that we live in is very different from the decades past, like where learning kind of maybe stopped as you kind of finish the program or as you finish college. But nowadays, like we live in a very dynamic world, and especially as a software engineer, you're constantly going to face like new things, new technologies, new way of doing things gets introduced, and you have to kind of continuously learn to even keep up with the job or to just improve yourself to get to the next level. So that's the advice that we want to give to you guys, which is to continue your learning, right? And there are kind of things that you could do to also prioritize. So you could identify your priorities for learning and just kind of keep focusing in that area. So some major areas of like things that you could learn is things like coding fluency. Like if you feel like you're not too comfortable with the coding syntax or the things that the coding language has to offer, then you may want to focus on that so that coding kind of becomes like a second nature to you. And there are also algorithm and data structure that a large majority of Techquitable has focused on, so that you can think about problems in algorithmic ways and think about what are the different data structures you could also introduce to get to a more efficient solution, right? And the third area is system design. Techquitable did not spend much time digging into this area, but if you are interviewing for companies that have system design as one of the requirements, this is also something that you might want to look into and be able to be prepared to answer any of them. And lastly, at the end of the day, software engineering is really about like building software and shipping them, right? And you also want to maybe get more practice on that. So then, building project would also help you become better coder or better builder. So that's, so you might think that's like another area that you might want to focus on. So to kind of like navigate all these different areas of like learning, possible learning, we organize this like list of resources you can take a look and use even after Techquitable. So Miles, if you don't mind clicking on that, just want to kind of show the students what this is, what the doc is about. Oh, yep, just that link right there. Yep. So basically for each of those like major areas of learning that you could be doing, we basically listed books or websites that could be helpful to you. So yeah, feel free to check them out. For the coding fluency, kind of listed books that we have also mentioned in Slack, but things like the Effective Software Development series that are available in different language. A lot of people in the industry also likes this book called Clean Code by Martin Robert C. Right, and there's also a bunch of websites like Code Academy, Treehouse, and Egghead. That range in price from like being free to costing some amount of money per month or per year, but that could really help you get better at being more fluent in coding. And moving on to algorithms and data structures, like there are also books that we mentioned, such as Cracking the Coding Interview, which is also kind of like seen as like the Bible of like preparing for a coding interview. And there's also another book called Elements of Programming Interview that's really helpful. And as for websites, I think all of you guys are familiar with LeetCode at this point as you kind of practice these problems. And there's also another website that's called Exponent that is unfortunately requires C to use, but could also be helpful as you practice these things. And then moving on to system design questions. One great thing about software community is that we're really big on open source and making things free as much as possible. So there are a bunch of community members out there who have organized like the list of resources on GitHub. So under the website section, there are several GitHub pages that you could go and actually see, okay, what are the other resources that you could use, or even go through their guide themselves to learn how to get better at answering system design, or even thinking about the system design in the first place. And then for this, there was a bunch of books and YouTube videos that are available out there, so I recommend checking it out. And then moving on to building projects, there are also a bunch of programs or like websites out there that you can check. Fleet Code Camp is also a really good one and an intensive one. It takes a couple of months, but that's kind of like you think that's like the worth the amount of time that you want to spend on. I think that would be a totally good place to go. But other websites such as Code Academy, once again, Treehouse and Egghead also offers ability for you to just learn things like full stack development or even mobile engineering, if that's your thing, to kind of get better at building things. And lastly, as you kind of enter the phase of applying for jobs and when getting like a mock interviews, we recommend these other websites. Definitely not comprehensive, but some samplers of websites that you could use to look for jobs. So these websites include things like LinkedIn, Handshake, TripleByte, Intervene.io, and so on, that are really, they're gonna like present you with a lot of job opportunities. And once again, you probably want to also complement cold applying for these jobs with a warm outreach approach that we also mentioned earlier during the recruiter panel discussion. So make sure that you also do that, because at the end of the day, kind of comes down to relationship with the people in the company as well. That could possibly help you navigate through the process. So yeah, just wanted to kind of like give you guys a quick preview of what this resource is about. And Miles, if you could get back to the slides. So yeah, remember this resource is available out there for you. And you also have access to our Techquitable slides and video they can access anytime. So just remember, be a lifelong learner and never stop learning. And then moving on to the last message. So next slide, please. Yep. So lastly, let's stay in touch. We really hope you enjoy being part of this community and took away a lot of lessons with you. And we'll also really appreciate if you would be willing to stay in touch. So there are different ways in which you can stay in touch, but you can participate in a future cohort as mentors or teaching assistant. If you think being on the side of teaching will also be interesting and it will be also educational to you. And also, even if you don't think you can make a time for that, we'll also really appreciate you giving us updates from time to time. So You will continue to have access to the Slack. So if you need help, any help with like evaluating offers or feeling stuck with the interview process, we'll always be there for you. And then also, yeah, just give us updates on how life your journey is going. Yeah, because at the end of the day, Techquitable believes in your success, and we are always going to be there for you. But yeah, that pretty much like wraps kind of like the 3 messages that we want to give over to you guys. I know that Miles, Karan, Viveka, if you guys are around and want to kind of add any messages to that.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything Wentao said. We are so happy to have seen all of y'all grow and be part of this community the last 9 weeks. I guess maybe even before that, since we interviewed you and got to see how stellar of students you are and software engineers you'll be. And please keep in touch. We are your mentors, and we as program leads are all available still through the Slack. You can ping us anytime if you want career advice, things on your mind. We are always going to be resources for you, as well as the general technical community. So thank you so much for being a part of this program with us, this cohort.
Yeah, just to echo what Miles and Wentao said, you guys worked very hard, and we've been really glad to see your growth over the past 8 weeks or so. We also know that like it is a marathon, and so for instance, like coming out of this cohort, like there's still a lot of you still in the interview process, and so stay motivated. Like don't lose faith. As the recruiter said, it can take time. It can take, as Shanice said, like 80 plus applications or so. It is a tough process, and so we're here to support you even as you graduate. And we hope to be with you to keep your head high and see you guys do awesome things in the future. And
Great.
with that, I
yeah.
think you guys have officially graduated. Woohoo.
Yeah, congrats, guys. Congrats, everyone.
Cool. So have a good rest of the weekend. Best of luck with all the interviewing. Feel free to stay in touch. And we may also reach out just in the fall when we do our next cohort. So we'll definitely count on you guys for some referrals.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Keep in touch.
Keep in touch. Bye-bye.